Hello everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream Crafting Annihilation, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Tomb of Annihilation. If you are playing characters Mannix, Kaless, Gillian, George, or Theron, this is not meant for you. This is a no-fly zone, get out! For the rest of you, welcome. We stream our Tomb of Annihilation sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. Catch up on previous episodes on my YouTube page, as well as read weekly session recaps at roguewatson.com. If you'd like to support the channel, go to patreon.com/roguewatson. Personal shoutouts to my platinum patrons Andrew, Brian, and Richard, and gold patrons RPG, Papercrafts, and Charming Grenade. Thank you all so much for your support. For the campaign, we use Roll20. For streaming, I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. Currently, this morning, we are getting our roof replaced on our house. So if you hear what sounds like bombs going off, if I'm in like a war zone or something, that's what's going on. I'm hoping it doesn't pick up things too badly. But yeah, they're basically going to be doing that all day today. I'm in a 2-story house, and I'm on the lower floor, so I think that will help. It just kind of depends on if the mic, I don't know how much it's going to pick things up, and obviously some noises are louder than others, but hopefully it's not going to be super horrible bad. Just the way the timing kind of fell. Alright, so Tomb of Annihilation. What happened last week? Last week was actually a non-combat session. It was pretty much just chilling out in a bar, as you do. And plus we had that session 4, which was all combat. So I think it was nice to have a session of not so much combat and just basically social encounters and dialogue. And it was almost purely meeting the guides. And I really, really liked the concept of DM-controlled allies to the players that the players can kind of choose. And I really like the concept of having at least most of the guides associated with their own side quests within the story, very much like how a video game would structure, like a Mass Effect. BioWare games do this very well, which is like all your party members essentially have their own like arc they go through with their own quest system. And I did that here with my players as well. All my players have their own personal quest, I was very much inspired by that system. But I also wanted to do that with most of the guides, not all of them, but most of them have their own quests associated with actually hiring them. So like Hugh Hackenstone and Musharib, the two dwarves, are actually related with their quests. There's go the pounding. And in fact, I tied in Hugh Hackenstone's into Theron's personal quest in that they actually know each other. The only weird thing is on those, and this is kind of true of the whole campaign, is I'm front-loading a lot of the mission content because the players are they're at the hub city of this entire campaign. This is the Tristram of the Diablo 1 campaign, think about that, or whatever the Destiny city is called. Like, this is like you've got your one bastion of civilization, so obviously you're going to pick up a lot of your quests and a lot of your people and have a lot of your social encounters there. So it's balanced-wise, it's weird because I feel like we are spending a long time in the city. And I read, obviously in prepping for Tomb of Annihilation, I read a lot of reports about how, like, be prepared for your players to not spend much time in the city. They want to get into the jungle as soon as possible. And I didn't like that, and I dissuaded that because obviously I'm not doing the big time limit of the Death Curse, at least initially, because I thought the city was neat and there was a lot of stuff to offer, but I also wanted to make sure they had a lot of that kind of content there because there are no other cities in the rest of this campaign. I do want to give them the chance to teleport and return to the city, obviously at some point, maybe even multiple times, but I definitely want to do several things. Dinosaur Race, obviously my players are dying to do that. I've been teasing that one. By having that take place kind of in a later date. And I've got it literally written out, okay, here's the events that happen on day 1, day 2, and day 3. So I definitely wanted plenty of content for the city itself. We are spending kind of a long time. I think we arrived here in session 2, and we'll be starting session 6, and the party's still in the city. And frankly, I still have more content for them to do in the city. Anyway, back to guides. So Hugh and Musharib, they're getting these quests, but they're not going to be able to tackle these anytime soon. And I showed them on the map, the fact that Wormheart Mine is at the ass end of the continent. Go to the DM map. So obviously the players are up here in Port 9 Zaru. Wormheart Mine is way the hell down here, and it just makes zero sense to trek through the entire jungle if you have the option to take a boat. So obviously I was very clear about, Hugh Hackenstone straight up tells them, like, get a boat, and then they say, we have a boat, but we have to do this quest first in order to basically get access to the boat. And now I'm kind of creating, even though it's an open world system, I'm creating some kind of soft gates to make sure the players are like, okay, well, you can't get on the boat until you at least go like and explore half the jungle, essentially. And then once you do that, they should be more like little, 5 or 6 even by the time that happens, and then they can take the boat, go all the way around, and do the pirates, which the pirates is another quest they've had on for a while, and do Wormheart Mine and Hrakamar, which are both really neat locations that I want them to do, but they will probably, I would imagine, be the last things that they do before going to Omu, and I would expect that they would have the location of Omu probably by the time they would return to Port 9 Zaru and have access to the ship. I would assume they would do Oralunga and the Heart of Ubtao and Nangalore, which are pretty much all the things they would have to hit up to get the information for that the Soulmonger is in Omu, and that's the location they need to go to. That's the plan for the jungle crawl anyway. So, and part of that is they can get guides, and these guides can lead them to different areas. So obviously with Hugh and Musharib, they don't need them now, and they picked up on that pretty quickly. I wasn't sure, and I was going to kind of play it by ear if they wanted to recruit Hugh as their guide and take him with them for their jungle excursion. I left the possibility of that open, but instead they kind of picked up on the fact of immediately like, okay, well, we can just pick and choose who we want now, and then we can basically work through all of these quests one at a time, which is, if I were a player, that's also how I would want to tackle it. So that's kind of how I presented it as a DM. Is like, I don't want to create a mutually exclusive scenario where choosing one guide locks you out of the other guides necessarily, because I think I'm creating some good content there in terms of, like, okay, let's take Azaka now, and then we'll do Firefinger, and then we can return to Port 9 Zaru, and then get Hugh and Musharib whenever we get access to the boat, and then we'll take them and go on. They were able to basically skip Farrell and Gondolo by getting the map through a pretty funny kind of teamwork scenario where Gillian like dances with Gondolo and all that. That was a lot of fun. I definitely played up the fact that the treasure map was pretty much their only associated quest, and certainly they did not need to take them. Obviously, I was very clear about the fact that these guys were basically shitty kind of con artists or charlatans in terms of being guides, and they'd already done a little bit of research and background information on who these guys were. But they were also very interested in that treasure map, so I let them straight up be able to do this kind of coordinated teamwork to steal the map, and then they gained that location onto their player's map, which I can show that one. Even though they don't have, this little unique fog of war system, but they still have the location right here of Needle's Bone. So that's pretty much the only associated quest, which I believe I did make a quest for that. Journal, quest, treasure map, Needle's Bones, yeah. This is kind of how I do my quest system. You've probably seen this before. I also went through and made sure to include some updates. So like right here, I'll include updates on different sessions instead of just the basic notes. Literally how like a video game journal would like update as you do things. Like they'll, different paragraphs will be included. I think I leave these open to where my players can edit them, at least the personal quests. But it ends up being, I'm running the campaign, I'm looking at this more than the players, so I'm going to be the one probably coming in here and just doing updates based on kind of what happened in the last session. So like the Roka one, there was an update there, because obviously they met with Roka and got that quest. So Roka himself is not a guide, but he has a quest associated with going to Fort Belawarian, which is basically the only reason players would go to Fort Belawarian. I initially thought maybe I just skip this area because it's not really interesting, there's nothing going on. The charter thing is whatever. It basically is only tied to a random encounter of Flaming Fist mercenaries. And the only reason I would really want to skip it is because I feel like we are spending a long time in the city, and it's just kind of another city scenario. But I'm not going to skip it because I think it does offer something different compared to what is normally going to be just a bunch of dungeons and a lot of jungle crawling and just dangerous hostilities. And this is basically it's kind of a heist. In terms of they're going to a location, that location is not hostile to them, but they have to get something out of there that they're not supposed to get. without being caught, which I think could produce a fairly interesting scenario. And then who's it? And the reward for doing that will be getting the free guides, River Mist and Flask of Wine, which interestingly enough, they seemed interested in those two before, but then after they learned about them and said, oh, well, these guys are actually working with the Zentarum, and they seem a little, not trustworthy. So I don't know, even if my players complete this mission and I literally give them these two Tabaxi guides for free and say, look, these will be your guides for your campaign for free, will you take them? And I'm not sure my players actually will. Like, they seemed like they were kind of turned off by those two. So that was a little disappointing because I liked the thought of me being able to, DM a pair of Tabaxi siblings who aren't necessarily evil. They're just kind of not, obviously the most righteous do-gooders. So we'll see on that. But yeah, they definitely seem like Azaka is the go-to guide for a lot of people. She's confident. She's powerful. The PCs don't even realize how powerful she is, and I definitely played that up. The fact that she is just this very supremely confident, kind of a diva, personality, in terms of just not arrogant, I guess, in a way, in terms of her own experience and prowess. And obviously part of that is the fact that she is a fucking were-tiger. I have not decided how and when the players will learn about this. Obviously, having it happen like in a very epic combat scenario could be a lot of fun. And the longer I can go with hiding it, I think the more effective it'll be. But yeah, I do expect my players to take Azaka. I expect her to want to go to Firefinger as soon as possible. I think the players, and obviously they'll be tied because Undril wants them to go to Camp Righteous. And it sounds like, based on what they were talking about a little bit, is that maybe they'll go to Camp Righteous first and then move across to Firefinger. Now, the interesting thing here is that my players don't realize that Camp Righteous is not where they need to go. Camp Righteous is fucking destroyed. There is some neat stuff in there that I intend to play with, but Camp Righteous essentially branches off into two other locations, and that's Yeliark, which is this goblin tribe village, and Camp Vengeance, which is where the actual Order of the Gauntlet has moved to. Both those locations are more west in this direction. So that'll be really interesting if they convince Azaka, like, look, we'll go to this Camp Righteous, then we'll immediately trek across the jungle and go to Firefinger. But then when they go to Camp Righteous and realize, oh shit, we actually have to go more of these directions, then Azaka's going to be like pissed about that. She's going to be like, no, we need to go this way for Firefinger. So that might make kind of an interesting dynamic there if they can keep her on board. Maybe some persuasion checks, or maybe they'll offer to pay her, or something involved, because she's definitely going to want to go to Firefinger. And then, but she told them Oralunga was west of Mabala, so maybe they'll be like, look, can you just get us to Oralunga next? So I'm very interested to see how they manage their actual jungle crawl, though we're probably still like probably a good 2 sessions away from that, if I'm being honest. And then Iku and Salida were not there because, and I mentioned this in my written recap, but Iku, I don't know what to do with Iku. She is a disguised Coatl, which is cool, but there's a lot of disguised guides, and I'm just not sure how to use her yet. I'm keeping her kind of close to my pocket. She might just end up being a random encounter in the jungle. Her associated quest is Mabala, and I think Mabala is one of the weakest locations in the game, to where I may just change it entirely. I might look up what other people have done with Mabala, if anybody has any ideas of Mabala. It's this big, like, ghost town village on top of a plateau, which is a neat idea. Like, it's a mile-high plateau, which is why it's on the player's map, even though they don't have that vision. And it's this hag has just killed everyone in Mabala, and then there's, like, some terrafolk around, and that's the only thing that's going on. Like, I don't know why the players wouldn't just come in and kill this hag. So, I mean, you could come up with some good story things there, I think. The only thing that the main thing that turns me off of Mabala is there's no map for it at all. There's no map. So obviously for Roll20 purposes, that's a bummer. I would have to put together a whole map system. So it makes me think, like, should I actually do all this, or should I just create it like there's nothing there but a ghost town? I don't know. I haven't decided quite. I could do the terrafolk on the cliff face. That's kind of what Firefinger is. So I haven't decided yet, and I've got time till the players make it there for sure. So and then Salida, I do want to use Salida, and I will use her at Oralunga. I've got ideas for her. Tracking days, she'll turn on the full moon. That's a werewolf, isn't it? I mean, you could do that for sure. I haven't thought about that. I really want to tie it to just like an emotional thing, like it's like a mutant on X-Men or something, where it's like their powers are unleashed when they're under like emotional distress, or like they're hurt or something. So I'd like, my ideal scenario would be like she gets like wounded really hard, or there's just really bad guys out and the players are kind of losing this battle, and then she just fucking tigers out and the players are like, oh shit, like that would be my ideal scenario for sure. Hopefully not during just something mundane. Thought the players can obtain a form of resurrection mandala. That is true. Juicy. Yes, that functionally that is what it's for, which seems bizarre to me. Like, so if the players die in this campaign because the death curse is active, that creates a big problem in terms of you cannot basically resurrect anybody. So the hag is there that the players can work with, that she will essentially turn them into a zombie, but the zombie is then affected. It's a zombie with the same traits as the. I haven't looked at the exact rules, but I think they retain all the same stats functionally, but their body slowly decays, because they are basically at that point affected by the death curse. That could be a really interesting scenario. I'm not comfortable killing players. I think the whole, like, especially in this game where it's all about travel, I think just traveling around, having one player get weaker and weaker really sucks and is just an awful form of punishment. It could be an interesting thing if an NPC dies, they could go there, but I don't. Maybe a guide. It just feels like a weird, like they would mention this thing like, oh, there's this. We heard there's this witch in Mimbala that can resurrect that. But I mean, and granted, there's no like Kalinar in this campaign like there was in Our Lost Mine, and although I say Kalinar, and Kalinar did end up working for a lich, so who knows? And maybe our players will be more amenable to that. I imagine most people would not want to work with a hag who ate an entire village, but I mean, players can surprise me. So that is a thing on there. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm leaning towards just running it as like a straightforward war zone with a hag and maybe some more interesting things. I don't know. I've got time to figure that out. Ghost Town would be... Yeah, I mean, a Ghost Town could be cool. I just feel like if the players actually climb up this mile-high plateau, there needs to be something cool there. And I don't know, a Ghost Town with like a hag, and I think there's like a flesh golem like buried somewhere. And if they don't, I mean, they haven't really asked about Mobile, and I don't know, maybe it's... I need to like put them on this map so they can look at it, maybe ask people in town before they leave. It might be worth doing, because they might be like, why can't we see this place? Or maybe they're trying to keep it secret, like, oh, maybe we shouldn't tell the DM we can see this location. But for the purposes of this session, what I really want to talk about is, and Dinosaur Race. That will be, I can talk a little bit about that this session, maybe towards the end. I don't think we'll get to the Dinosaur Race tomorrow. I think it'll be the session after that, or maybe even after that. I don't know. Things can take a while. I always underestimate. This session is tomorrow's session will be the start of day 2 in the city. We've spent like 3 sessions in the city, but it's the start of day 2. And I'm assuming, which is a horrible thing to do as a DM, but you kind of have to, that the players will go to Fort Belawarian. Because they've got the quest from Roka, and I'm going to have them come out, and Roka's going to be like, hey, I went to the ship, and I pulled some strings, and I can basically get us all there for free. She'll waive the cost because I, pulled some Zentarum strings, and he's not really going to get into it. I'll bullshit something about how, smuggling will make it easier, or grease some palms, or something. He can even allude to the fact that he paid their ferry if we can leave today. So, and the fact that the only thing the players have to wait for, we know the players don't want to leave the city because they are dying to do the dinosaur race, and I already mentioned on day 1 the dinosaur race is going to be 2 days. So we're on day 2, the dinosaur race is day 3, and they can't return to Zatembe to get their ritual feedback until that evening. So they basically have all day in the city with nothing to do, and I'm literally filling it with, okay, go to Fort Belawarian. So I'm assuming the players will do that. So assuming they go to Fort Belawarian, then we can talk about Fort Belawarian. It will take about a little less than half a day to get there. They can skirt, across the bay right here. They don't have to jack with airmags. They're not going in and out of the bay. And I'm okay with ferrying them on water. I'm just not interested in doing a bunch of bullshit jungle encounters just to get them to the fort and back. That seems lame and not necessarily fun. Yeah, Iku is tied to Mabala. That's true. And notice how I wasn't trying to use Iku, and I don't like Mabala, so I'm also not really using Iku right now, Juicy. So yeah, that's And maybe if they do decide to go to Mobala and I decide to flesh it out, that could be a good reason to use Iku. Like, I could definitely just have her there, or maybe have her by the base in case they come up to Mobala and they're like, we want to start exploring this site. Then I can have her come up and then actually talk to the players, and then she would just be essentially that quest-giving NPC for that area, not even, and the nice thing is they'll recognize her, the fact that I planted that seed as her being a guide, so they can sort of trust her, essentially, and she could kind of do the, have the like, oh, I had a group and they explored Mobala and they were killed by this hag and you need to go kill her, something like that. So I could probably use Iku with Mobala once they get there. So Fort Belwarian, getting there should be easy. I'm not going to have any encounters or anything. And honestly, I am under planning this entire sequence. Like, I usually have, content planned for locations. I really didn't do that here. Like, I have the map, which unfortunately it is one of the few 10-foot scale maps in the campaign in Roll20. I thought about doing what Chris does for Storm King's Thunder, which is, doubling the size, which makes the map fucking huge, but fixes the problem of the tiny tokens because it's subdivided right now with 5-foot grids. I haven't done that here. I'm torn on which way is better. I hate having the big maps, and I hate having the small tokens. Neither one is ideal. Obviously, 5-foot maps are the best thing to do in Roll20, and one of the reasons I loved this campaign is because most of the maps are 5-foot maps. This is literally one of, like, 2 areas. I think the other is the Pirate Hangout that uses a 10-foot battle map. So, a bit of a bummer there. I don't think it'll be that bad because there's not a whole lot of actual tactical combat here. There should not be, because the players will be in dire straits if they try to fight here. And that's the other weird thing, is I don't know what the players are going to do. Like, Roka doesn't know that much in terms of intel. He doesn't know the layout of the fort. He just knows it's up here, the Flaming Fist is here, and he's not really going to know much information. He knows that the gates are going to be open during the day, so it's easier to just walk in, and adventurers come in and get a Charter of Exploration, which costs 50 gold, which is pretty substantial. My players do have some money now. And adventurers can come in here and basically buy supplies and then head out into the jungle from here, rather than Port Nine-Zara if they want to. For whatever reason, it's very strange. Like, I guess if people are coming from Baldur's, if they're ferrying adventurers in or supplies, then they can go maybe from that city, knowing that those ships won't be attacked by pirates. And then they could end up here, and then just instead of heading over to Port Nine-Zara, they can just head right out of the jungle from this location. It feels like a weird thing to add, and plus the way it's located on the map, it's high up, so where the players really aren't exploring the jungle yet. They're just kind of going off and doing this other side tangent. So it's nice to get them out of the city, but it's not quite, a jungle adventure excursion. So I am keeping them at level 2 for now. This will be part of their level 2 adventuring, is just all of Fort Belwarian. And I don't know, so I've put tokens on the map. Roll20 did not, I don't think, had any tokens on this map. They had a bunch of, let's see if they have it in the corner. It's been a while since I reviewed this module. I think it was a year, in fact. Yeah, right here you can see all the GM layer tokens, which is kind of useless because you have to just read. So in the campaign book, it says that there are like 50-some guards, like 3 veterans, a Castellan named Gruta Halsdotter, and the commander, Liara Porter. And the first thing I wanted to do was change the tokens, because it had just a bunch of the kind of generic Chultan guard, and I thought that to really drive home the fact that this is not a Chult outpost, this is a outpost from the Lord's Alliance, from Baldur's Gate. And I wanted to kind of create like that imperialist, like colonizer kind of a thing, where it's like they're very, maybe not outwardly racist, but they're just kind of that arrogance of this, from another continent coming in and setting up shop and just literally laying claim to the lands. So I wanted to create just a more generic guard token that definitely was not a native Chultan. And that's why they look different, because I ended up using my, I think these are one of the Earth Cultist pictures from my Prince of the Apocalypse campaign, since I have all those tokens ready to go. Unfortunately, obviously, they're in a different style. But and Burned, fan of the show, did give me the tokens, the ability to change them. I just didn't do it here. I was lazy. I'm just going to drag and drop from Roll20 in this case. If I have to make a new token like I did here, I made a new one for the Castellan. It does bug me whenever it clearly has like a named NPC. So in this case, like a female knight, and then for the token, it was the generic like male picture. That kind of thing distracts me a little bit. It's okay if I can say like, okay, well, there's men, women, everything is here represented by this one generic token. But if it's an actual named person, then I feel like that needs to actually look like that person. So I ended up finding a kind of generic female knight picture for the Castellan here. Otherwise, I just dragged and dropped a bunch of generic tokens. The players can shop. I did include Kawasha. So what's weird is the Fort Belawarian has guides. And there's no real information on like why they're there. I guess Shago is like friendly with them. He's the son of one of the merchant princes. I'm not even trying to use him. He's used in a quest where like the players get a mission to go assassinate him. That seems a little hardcore, and they don't really have a good... I haven't invented a good reason to, so I'm just kind of eliminating that for now. I feel like that just having the one mission in here is enough. But Kawasha is somebody they can meet. He's a druid of the Emerald Enclave. He hates the undead, so that could be very amenable to the players, but he doesn't have a quest. He's just a good guide, basically. He's got this little Vegapygmy with him, which is nice, but because he didn't really have his own quest, I'm just leaving him there as like somebody the players can, chat with, and possibly be a guide. But honestly, the players have so many guides and so many that work for free. I don't at all see them recruiting this guy. But he is there if they want to chat with him, I suppose. What I expect to happen, the players can walk in. They'll talk with Garuda. Will basically direct them to go to the keep. In order to get a charter of exploration. And that's the one thing that Roka will tell them is like, look, we don't need like an alibi or a story or anything, because adventurers and explorers come in here all the time to buy supplies and buy that charter of exploration, then leave. So there's no, it's not going to be that suspicious of us to be there. The suspicious part is that he wants to root around like in the commander's quarters and try to find some kind of evidence of collusion of an alliance between the Flaming Fist and the pirates, because everybody, and the players learned about this from Zindar when they came into the city, they noticed that any ships that fly the Lord's Alliance flag or Baldur's Gate flag or whatever are just left completely alone by the pirates, whereas anybody coming to and from Port Ninezaru is harassed like constantly. And the players, experience that harassment firsthand whenever they arrive to the city. So the tricky thing will be coming in here and then coming up with a plan to loot the commander's quarters. And in that regard, I'm basically just leaving it pretty open to the players. Like, Roka doesn't really have a plan. His one plan, the only plan he would suggest is like, look, just create some kind of distraction or event that causes the guards to go on alert and like leave, some of their postings or go investigate something, and then I can sneak into the only thing he wants to do is specifically go to the quarters, which they will figure out pretty quickly is in the upstairs section of the keep. So here's the actual map layout. It's not too complicated. There's a keep in the back, and then there is like a horse stables here. By the way, if you're joining me right now, I apologize. We are getting our roof replaced, so I don't know if you can hear any of these poundings or anything happening. Sounds like bombs going off for me. Hopefully it's not coming in too much on the mic, but they'll be doing that all day. I posted guards everywhere. Like I said, there are 50 guards, but it does specifically mention that they're on kind of an ABC shift. So only one guard, and what I took to that meaning is that 1/3 of the guards are on active duty, 1/3 of the guards are off duty, and then 1/3 of the guards are asleep. So that's how I'm going to create like how many guards they have to deal with at any one time. So technically 2/3 of the guards will be, around visibly. Although the actual barracks are down here, so they don't have to deal with like walking through barracks or anything. Their goal, and like I said, they'll be able to make it into the keep completely. As long as they just say we're here for the charter of exploration, and they'll be kind of nudged to go in here, which is actually a separate map here, which I'm just now realizing I don't think is actually subdivided. I might have to do that. All the tokens are smaller. And I don't know why this one is still one square. I know why, because it's in the book. It's the same map page. So they'll come in here. You can see that's what they can see. And then be directed to this lower end where they can actually meet with Commander Liara Porter. She's got an awesome picture. That's a crazy outfit. And she's going to give them just a little bit of a spiel about, we claim these lands. She's not like a jerk or anything, but she's definitely, used to dealing with adventurers and pretty lawful for the most part. I think she's specifically lawful evil. And she welcomes the adventurers, and, they can buy their charter of exploration. And then at some point, they'll have to figure out either, and maybe I'll leave it open where the players don't even know, like, are the quarters going to be upstairs? Are they behind one of these locked doors? Like, because this is what, they're not going to know too much. Now, obviously, a big part of the, if you want to provide a distraction method, is they're going to see dinosaur pens up here with Hadrosauruses and Deinonychuses. So if they manage to do something in there, that could obviously be a pretty big deal. Apparently they are like trained, like, Jurassic World style, which still makes them very dangerous. But they are like trained as like hunting dogs essentially for the Flaming Fist. But I mean, if they get loose, especially with these kind of dinosaurs, that could be a bit of a chaos scenario. And maybe they won't know, like, do we have to go upstairs? Do we have to get past these like guarded doors? Like, we don't know where to go. I'm hoping to create an interesting scenario. I'm also hoping that the players don't just leave everything up to Roka, especially because my party has 2 rogues, one of whom I'm fairly certain, I can check right now, is a better stealth person than Roka is. Let's see, what are Roka's stats? He has the spy stat block, which means he has a stealth of +4, which is not very good compared to most PC rogues, even at level 2. Kaless, who has a dex modifier of 4, has a stealth of 8. Good lord. An 8 stealth. So clearly, I did a lisp there. Clearly, Kaless would be the best candidate for sneaking around. It will be interesting to see if... I'm really interested to see how the players tackle this whole thing, like without knowing where they need to go or what they're even looking for. And they're in a situation where nothing is hostile to them, except if they try to go upstairs or obviously try to go to any of these. I think it's just this door right here. In fact, I'm not actually sure if that door is locked. I think it's just these 2. So this one and this one are for sure locked, because these are the storerooms, and this one includes all the generic, like, mundane weapons and armor, and then this back room actually contains a bunch of magical items. So if the players actually make it back here, that's a huge boon. Now we're talking DC 20 dex check for picking locks. I'm interested. I'm going to pose this question right now to the chat. How do you handle lock picking in a non-combat situation? In other words, how do you handle something that is a check, that you want it to be a check, but that the players could, in theory, just keep repeating that check until they succeed? And I looked up a bunch of different methods to that. Some people are like, we only allow 1 check and that's it, because we assume that's like your best shot. Others are like, you take 20. Others are like, the DC increases every time you fail. So there's interesting methods on how to tackle this situation, because I feel like the first thing my players would do when failing this lockpick is like, well, can I just try again? What I'm leaning towards is that it takes time. It takes time to pick a lock, and during that time, things can happen. So if I say, like, okay, you can work on picking this lock, but it's going to take you, 10 or 15 minutes of sitting there, with your tools out, literally picking this lock. And during that time, whatever distraction they're doing, is only going to take up so much time, for example. Or if there's a guard patrol, then they could come back. So I'm thinking about trying to create a time scenario, even though we're not in initiative. So it'd be and that's always tricky to do, is be like, okay, yeah, you can retry it, but, if you fail this time, then a guard is going to come by. So like that kind of a thing. Or not tell them that, but just say, yes, you can retry it. But I'll just tell them, like, every lockpick attempt takes, 15 minutes, and obviously things can happen in that time. Lockpick could break. I feel like if they crit fail, which, you know, and technically, and I read this all the time, that's one of the biggest misconceptions of D&D. There is no actual crit fail. In fact, there's no, I believe there's no crit fail or crit success when it comes to skill checks in general. It's just combat, and it has crits. But people like to treat, you know, rolling natural 20s and rolling 1s as, you know, exciting events because they're exciting. And I feel like, yeah, that's something that could happen as a lockpick could break. Could make noise. Yeah, that seems weird. I don't, even if you fuck up a lockpick, I can't imagine that making too much noise unless something is actually trapped. Okay, yeah, so Juicy, the one... So that's a variation of the, like, you can only try it once, essentially. One check per person. Failing means they think it's just not doable. The only weird thing about that is if they really do a poor shot... I mean, I guess you just represent, like, yeah, you're just having a big trouble with this lock for some reason. You know, I feel like if somebody rolled a 4 and they got, you know, ended up getting an 8 and they're normally very good at lockpicking... Yeah, I mean, that's an idea. I feel like normally in all of our games we have allowed the chance to retry it. But I feel like there does need to be some consequences to failing a check. Otherwise, why do you do skill checks? Like, if there's not a consequence, then what is the point of doing skill checks? You could just say, okay, you spend the next, you know, half hour picking this lock. Anthony says, can keep making the check, but each attempt more of a chance a guard comes by. If failing the check by 5 or 10, then increase the DC for the next attempt. So that's building on what I was mentioning, which is lockpicking takes time, which is definitely something I'm leading towards. Even though it's hard to do, mechanically it's hard to make up those like precise rules, mainly because I don't know, like right now there's no guard patrols. It's these 2 guards right here. So if they do provide a distraction, then I have to come up with, okay, well, how long does this distraction work for versus how many skill attempts are they going to get at picking this lock. The noise, my example comes from shaking the door. Oh, yeah, okay. Shaking the door, yeah. Yeah, drawing noise. I feel like I like the concept of if you fail it really badly, like the player knows that they kind of fucked it up, then that could be an extra consequence that could generate sound or bring guards quicker than what it would normally do. What is... Let's see, what's Roka's skill? So, the bad thing is, Roll20 doesn't include tools. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe picking a lock is just a dex check plus your proficiency bonus, assuming you have lockpicking tools and you're proficient in them, which I believe rogues all get that. So in other words, if Roka were to pick a lock, it would be a +4. Is that correct? Because he's got a +2 dex, and I assume as a CR1 he just has a +2 proficiency bonus. So I would think that his lockpicking would be a +4. And it's just kind of Roll20 doesn't have that built in as a skill for lock. But you'd think Wizards would have just made lockpicking either a skill or just baked that into sleight of hand or something, rather than having this weird like tool proficiency thing, because those aren't ever listed as like a skill that you actually do. You just have to, and maybe that's just Roll20 because you don't have your, you know, your sheet laid out like that. Which would mean, so he's got a +4, which isn't great for a DC 20. That's pretty fucking hard to do. Celeste would then have a +6, I believe, because she's got a +4 and the proficiency bonus is still a 2. So +6 is a lot better. You only have to roll, what is that, a 14 or higher, which is still, you know, a pretty challenging roll to lockpick a DC 20. The other interesting thing is they can, it mentions that the Castellan, and the Commander have the keys, which they could technically sleight of hand those keys right off of them, but that obviously can get you in a lot of trouble. Yeah, I believe you can add it to, which I feel like for the rogues they should add that in there as a clickable thing. I thought they might have done that. Yeah, they just. I mean, I assume at this point rogues are just proficient in thieves' tools. Like I thought that was like an automatic thing for rogues. Maybe not. Maybe that's something they have to choose to do, but I think they can in their character sheets some way. You can add like a custom skill, and you can just add it like that for Roll20 purposes. We have not done that yet, but I imagine that would come up often enough where we would want to do that. Now, the interesting thing is they don't need to get into these stores. That's just the bonus. This one pick lock does you really no good in terms... I mean, you can loot a bunch of regular shit if you wanted to. But the real one is this one back here, which is a second lockpick, and that one does reward you with a lot of magical items. But what they really need to do is get upstairs. They need to basically just sneak up there. So they'll need to somehow distract these guards. Oh, I did gloss over it. Under passive perception. Oh! Yeah, okay, there it is. I do like to gloss over things. How does that work? Query. Did she already add it in there? I'm gonna mess with your sheet real quick. Attribute. Dex. Oh, badass. Okay. Wow. I rolled a 17. Okay, well, that's that. I did not realize they'd already set that up. She also put one in there for a dice set. I guess she's proficient in dice. Okay, that's cool. So yeah, it's Dex plus your proficiency. So it's just me as a DM. I guess I don't have that set up under my... If I were to use Roka, I'd have to actually go in here and add that skill, which I don't know if that's worth... I don't know if that's worth adding, or if it's just worth rolling a d20 and adding... Just adding a 4 to it. Not going to be that hard. So I don't have any scripted events for Fort Belawarian at all. It's very, very content light. I am really counting on my players to make things happen here. Now, I do have Roka as, you know, a DM player, but I do not want to steal the show at all. He doesn't have much of a plan. I mean, I want to make him, you know, confident in what he's doing, and he has a plan, but I really want the players to take the initiative here and come up with a coordinated idea of how to tackle this situation. In other words, I don't want to just take over as Roka and say, okay, here's, you do this, you do this, you do this. He's going to be like, look, you know, we'll come in, ask for Charter of Exploration, that gets us inside, and then from there, you know, do something, and then I can try to look for the commander's quarters, which he's not even sure. He might have a guess that they're upstairs, but he's going to note that the guards are guarding these two doors. And so the players just got to figure things out from there. I don't have much planned. I'm just purely going to try to react to what the players do. Obviously, they can try to come up with whatever distraction involving skill checks, and that can try to bring out, you know, whatever contingent of guards or however many they've got, and see what they can do. Obviously, if they get in trouble, it's going to be really bad. Combat would be absolutely disastrous, and the guards have no reason to murder these players. They would just presumably either just kick them out of the fort, depending on the severity of what they're doing, you know, banish them, or arrest them. And I don't even think there's like a jail here. Like, I really don't have very good plans for if things go really, really horribly awry. They could potentially like arrest the players, and that could create another interesting scenario. My players have never ever been in a situation where they would be arrested. And here, you know, guards aren't strong, but there are 50 fucking guards in this fort. Granted, only 2/3 of them would be around, but I mean, and they're level 2. Like, they just can't. By walking in and seeing all the guards on the roof and everything, like, they should figure out, like, okay, we can't really fuck this up very well. But my players also tend to be very brazen when it comes to, like, you know, stealing from people and sneaking around. So we'll see. I do, you know, I have a warning system where if somebody fucks things up, then they'll be warned about it, and that would probably create them, you know, the guards would then have like an active perception roll rather than just their passive, and maybe have a guard like follow them around, or something would make it more challenging if they were caught 1 or 2 times. But at some point, like, they may have to give up on this mission if things go really badly and they get kicked out. Like, that could be a possibility as well. There does have to be consequences, I suppose. But on the other hand, if my players have a really good plan and they're just fucking up skill checks, then I hope to kind of work with that too. Like, I don't want to just, you know, punish them too bad if they had at least a good idea with it. Tying people to trees in the jungle and slathering them in honey? Really? That's a thing? I remember reading that. Was that the Flaming Fist thing? I thought that was like what the goblins or pirates did. Tying them to the tree and slathering them with honey. I mean, I was just going to kick them out of the fort. Now, there are several quests associated with the Flaming Fist. And I mentioned this on my last stream on Crafting Annihilation. I didn't like them because I don't like the idea of the players having to return here. This seems like just a pain in the ass. It's a fairly remote location from the city. It's, 70 miles or whatever from the city by boat. And I'm already leery of having the players return to the city too much, let alone having to go all the way back to Fort Belwarian to turn in a quest that by the time they turned it in, probably wouldn't care much about the reward. Although, actually having severed ghoul heads for 20 gold pieces is pretty fucking solid. It's also very video gamey though. You've got 6 out of 10 heads. So I don't like that. The Shilku Reconnaissance, and I'm reading on page 56, there's a little sidebar that's got the quests on here. The Shilku Reconnaissance is super dumb. It's like, just go to this area where there's literally nothing. The book has nothing in this area. It's like, go there and then come back. And you'll get 1 potion or scroll in the areas like on the other side of the fucking world. Like, no, I'm not doing that. The only one that's interesting to me is the Strangers in a Strange Land, which is where the Flaming Fist has seen giant footprints, and they don't know what they are. They're like, we've been trying to catalog, obviously learn about the area, the flora and fauna, and these do not seem like they are anything that we're recognizing. We don't know what it is. Maybe you can figure it out. I don't want to necessarily present this as a quest, because again, I don't want the players to feel like they have to return here. But I do want to give that information because I think it's a fun tease for the fact that there are frost giants roaming around the jungle looking for Artis Cimber. And we know Artis Cimber is a major part of my campaign because that's a big part of Mannix's personal quest, obviously dealing with Zendala. And he's already been asked around by Artis Cimber quite a few times. So I like the fact that, and I tease the fact that there's different agencies looking for him, like there's like Roka's organization, the Zentarum are looking for him. The fact that they're like, oh shit, the frost giants are... And we knew that from Storm King's Thunder, the Frost Giants are looking for Artis Cimber. And the fact that they're in the fucking jungle here is really, really cool. And I definitely want to tease that. I want to tease them meeting the Frost Giants and the Ring of Winter. Not the ring itself. They just meet like this. It's like a random encounter. They just see like the icicle, like a frozen zone in the middle of the jungle. Like, what the fuck is this? And it's because Artis had used the Ring of Winter in that area. I want to do both of those things before seeing Artis because I think that's a really cool tease and build up to the fact that Artis is here and causing problems just by the fact that he's there and people are looking for him. And I think that's Liara mentioning that to the players in terms of those giant footprints out there. We don't know what they are. Is a fun tease for that. I don't necessarily want to like offer that as an actual official quest. But maybe I will. I haven't decided about that. I don't want the players to feel like they have to return here because I feel like this is a pain in the ass location to return here, basically. And I know, when I'm looking at quests, I'm looking at, again, video gaming. It's like, where is the quest at, and where does it originate from? So like, if it tells me to go over here, okay, I'll go over here. And this one doesn't have an actual location. It's just like somewhere south of the fort, which is the entire jungle. So, in terms of even getting quests here, and the players have so many quests, I also don't at all feel the need to throw more quests at them. Like at this point, where's our quest log? They have not, barely started the main adventure, and they have they have all their personal quests, and then all of these with the blue dot right here are quests in their quest log right now, and that's a lot. And they're on one right now. They did complete one quest. I forgot to mention that last time. They officially moved the Rescue Annette quest to completed, and they are on one now. So this infiltrating Fort Belwarian for Roka is definitely a quest on here. So they're at least doing quests. I don't want to saddle them with an additional quest while they're on a quest, basically. So, again, Fort Belwarian, very light on content. It really comes down to how the players handle it, what they do. I'm leaving this very, very open in terms of how things go down. I really want this to be like a fun heist scenario. I'm really hoping that our 2 rogues pick up on the fact that they have rogue skills that they can help. And that Kaless is, at the very least, better than Roka is at like sneaking around. I think The actual, I guess I'm looking at this map. The actual upstairs is interesting because I'm not putting hardly anything up there. There's nobody actually sleeps up here. These are guest rooms, basically. I guess I could put maybe a guest or two up here just to make it more interesting. But there's like going to be one, like, corporal asleep up here in a private room. And the idea is they need to get to here. They need to basically get to this room, or this one, I guess, either one. One of them is the commander's quarters. I'll probably make it this one down here. And they need to repair my roof, is what you're hearing. No. It's a DC 18 dex check to find a locked iron strong box under Liara's bed chambers, which has a 220 gold pieces and the sending stone that Liara uses to communicate with the pirates of Jahaka Anchorage. So that is the actual proof. Interestingly enough, I'm not sure the players or Roka would realize. I mean, they find the sending stone, but would they know? Like, I think I would have to include some kind of written document, incriminating evidence that maybe lists, or maybe not. Maybe I'll just go with the sending stone, and then the players have to... Oh, so what I need to do is I need to write some dialogue for if the players fucking use that sending stone. If they send a message, and then what happens when that message comes back? Because that message is tied to one of the pirates of Jahaka Anchorage, not Lascalar, not the one they met. The one with the gem eye, I believe. Zaroom, which they've got the names of the pirates. That's also their quest, is to deal with the pirates. So that could be an interesting thing if the players try to manipulate the pirates. Maybe they pretend to be Liara or something. I haven't actually thought about that. I'll need to include some bits of information if the players, once they get the sending stone, what do they actually do with that? Yeah, I'll have to come up with some interesting dialogue to see. But otherwise, there's actually no notes about what they just find the sending stone. So would they know, that's what it is? I would probably use Roka to just say, okay, I bet, this is how she contacts the pirates. Sending stones can send messages over long distances, and the players know this because that's how I gave them the main quest through Undrill's sending stone. So taking that would be quite the boon, and they would have access to the pirates in a weird way that they could try to manipulate. But that would create some friction because Roka would want that sending stone for the Zentarum. So, I mean, he might let the players mess with it at first, but if he's the one to take it, then he'll hang on to it, and if the players take it, then he'll definitely demand it over in order to give them their payment. The players can try to extort Roka, because obviously he's one person and they're a party, but he is going to mention that before they left, he told all of his organization about where he was and the mission he was on, and obviously if the players double-cross him, and he's in Tarum, so he's kind of used to dealing with this kind of thing, then his friends know to deal with them when they return. So I assume the players will play ball. If they don't, I may actually need to concoct some kind of an ambush combat scenario with Zentarum, where they come back on their boat, they're walking through the harbor, and they've just got crossbows aimed at them when they come back, and say in case Roka gives some kind of signal. So I may need to repurpose that alleyway map or come up with a harbor map real quick or something to deal with that, because I haven't thought about the prospects of if the players try to hold on to that sending stone and not give it to Roka. Obviously he would refuse to give them the reward for the mission, and the quest would technically be incomplete. But that could be a path they could take, but there would be consequences because then they would have to deal with the Zentarum. Yeah, I was thinking about just doing a journal, John, with information about the pirates or information they have. We'll give the pirates. And the other interesting thing is if the players have that information and then go to Zindar and say hey, look, the mercenaries are in league with the pirates. This is bad. I need to go after them. And Zindar is basically going to be I don't, that's good that you found that, and that makes sense, but we don't really have the authority for that. We can't jack with, certainly the Baldur's Gate, the Lord's Alliance. They have too much clout. What we really need to do is go after the pirates and not the Flaming Fist mercenaries. We can't really deal with them. So if you can deal with the pirates, then great. His offer still stands. So that's, the weird thing is, although they're learning about this connection, that's not actually something the players can capitalize on, I guess, too well, unless they come up with some clever way of using the sending stone that I haven't thought of. like obviously they would, if they pretend to be Liara, they might try to learn about the hidden pirate cove, and the pirates would have none of that. They would not give that information to Liara, even with their deal. But so I'll need to write some dialogue for that in case they do try to contact, in case they use the sending stone and try to contact it, which I don't see why they wouldn't try to use it. They could lie and say they didn't find it. How'd the Zentarum know? Well, Roka would be with them, right? So unless the players kill Roka, oh my god. Unless the players leave the fort, kill Roka, take the stone, and then return. But then if they return without Roka, then I think the Zentarum would attack them also. I think that would be part of the plan. Because Roka would definitely... Oh, so I think you were saying, Juicy. So if they... If Roka isn't involved in the literal theft of the item... So if, for example, Kales ends up going up there, finding the sending stone, pockets it, and goes back and tells Roka, no dice, we didn't find anything. That is a scenario that I have not anticipated. I mean, there would definitely be an insight check there with Kales having to do deception. I'm assuming it could be anybody that could do this. She just has the best deck skills. I think Roka would insist on being involved in the theft of it, but if the players play their card right, and search different areas, then that could be an interesting situation for sure. I think the players are always trying to play for their edge, and they should be. Certainly, players are normally untrustworthy of everybody, as they should be. Zentarum, doubly so. So that's what I would do. WWJD, what would Juicy do? That could be an interesting scenario. I've not thought about that. And I even said the fact that I hope the players are more proactive and do some of the grunt work. Like, what I don't want to happen is that literally they do this big distraction, Roka goes upstairs, and the players don't know anything after that, because I would off screen have the fact that he does get the sending stone and all that. But the players wouldn't even see this up-screen thing. They wouldn't know like what he found or anything like that. He would kind of reveal that he found the proof, and if they press him, then he can do that. I'm hoping the players are more proactive, and maybe somebody follows him and sees what he does, in which case he would eventually be successful and find the sending stone and pocket it, and maybe like Kales confronts it. I'm so excited about what happens because I just don't know how this is going to go down, how the players are going to work with this. If they somehow manage to find it without letting him know, obviously there will be deception checks there. Weirdly, though, the consequence is it will leave the quest uncompleted, because the quest was to find proof, and if they don't find proof, I mean, technically you could say, well, we confirmed that there was no proof of collusion, but I think Roka would be dissatisfied with that. Like, he is like, no, there's something somewhere, we just weren't able to find it. I don't know. The players would have to be extremely convincing, or some way to make him satisfied and walk away with nothing. That would be a really tricky thing to do. I'm okay with the players getting possession of the sending stone and leaving Roka with nothing. I don't know if I'm okay with letting the players get the possession of the sending stone, sending Roka with nothing, and getting all the quest rewards. That seems like a very, very difficult thing to do. I'm talking like DC 20 charisma checks and role-playing really well and all that stuff. That would be a very, very tricky scenario, but I do want to leave these things open to the players ultimately, because I don't need to railroad any of this into any kind of particular outcome. Like, there's no real information they need to learn here. There's nothing here. This is just an excuse to use this location. Like, I've got this map, all these maps. And I feel like it's just an interesting situation where the players aren't going into a dungeon. It's just an active fort that's not hostile to them until they start fucking things around, and then it can become hostile or become a very dangerous situation. So it's an excursion. It's just not a dungeon crawl. But I hope things work well. I hope the players respond well to the zaniness here. My plan, assuming they accept the path to go to Fort Belawarian, is to get them there like ASAP within 10 or 15 minutes of starting the session. Just hand wave the journey and get them there. Even the actual landing on the beach. And my players might want to spend a long time like, okay, and I'll note there's ships ferrying supplies from the beach to these rowboats ferrying supplies from an anchored ship to the beach, and hopefully the players just don't necessarily pick up, because Roka will be like, look, this is normal stuff. We can just land and walk in, and it's no big deal. We obviously want to have a plan, but it's not like they need to, do this zany, like we have to dress up as somebody, or I mean, and they can do that, but it's not like it's not a closed off guarded location. In other words, they don't have to like rappel down or doing this weird shit. Like they can walk in, but then from there inside they can then figure out what they need to do. There could be political repercussions. I mean, and part of this is, if they do go to the authorities or whatever, that's, I've got this like hidden, fame, I guess, system in my head about like what are the players all doing in the city to make themselves noteworthy, because the end result will be that Wakanga will contact them and want to meet with them, which is a big deal. Like you get a summons from Merchant Prince, because they still haven't met with him, and that's kind of part of their main quest. Was he was the contact for the Harpers that learned about the Soulmonger and Cholt and those connections and all that stuff. So the players need to meet with him, and I've got that planned. I assume that Fort Belawarian will take most of the session tomorrow. There's a chance that things will slow way down, and we're still in Fort Belawarian by the end of the session, and there's a chance that the players will be able to do everything with flying colors, and we'll get out of Fort Belawarian and back to the city it'd be evening time by the time they return, and then be able to go to Zatembe, which is just a dialogue session where I give them a bunch of information that Zatembe learned from doing his ritual, because the players gave him a lot of information. The merchant princes are paying the Flaming Fist to clear the jungles of undead. Yeah, I mean, and the Flaming Fist they're not evil necessarily. They're mercenaries. I am playing up the fact that they're kind of imperialistic dicks in that way, where they literally just kind of showed up and planted the flag and laid claim, even though there's clearly people living on this land. The colonizer thing. So they're kind of jerks in that way, but they're not necessarily evil. They are fighting against the undead, so they're kind of doing good work in that way. I mean, they do laying claim, but they're laying claim to where they're trying to push back against the undead, and they are doing good work. So I want to make a tricky situation where the players are like, these are not bad people, but we do think if they're in league with the pirates, and that creates kind of a bad form of collusion, I guess, because the pirates are bad. So there's a lot of gray area here, which is always nice to explore. The detective could notice that Zint was hiding the sending stone. Yes, I mean there's so many situations that could happen. It's impossible to plan for everything, and I'm not really trying to plan. I'm not really trying to plan for anything. That's kind of bad to say, but that's just, I have to be able to really respond to this. There will be situations, a lot of situations in dungeons and whatever else, where I have a lot of scripted things that are going to happen. Monster ambushes and traps and cutscene. Basically cutscenes and things that will happen. So I'll have planned for that. This one, I really don't have much of that at all. I just have a few lines of dialogue written for like when they meet with the commander, when they first get into the fort and all that. Otherwise, it is really going to be up to the players on how they respond to this situation. How like long of a leash they give Roka in terms of letting him snoop around, or how much they want to take charge of that. Roka, the only thing he would be insistent of is he is part of the team to like search the quarters, but he would be fine with anybody helping him since he required their help. But I'm really just leaving it open very much to the players on how to run this, so I'm fascinated to see how it works. Assuming we get through all of this fort, assuming it goes very smoothly, which I don't think it will, but we'll see. The players will return. It would be a funny scenario is if they end up like hauling ass, like Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Except in this case, it's like a bunch of guards like chasing after them, and they're like running, like start the engine, because they're running to the boat with this like full crew behind them. That would be pretty fucking hysterical. She wouldn't discover it was missing or anything, but if they created some kind of situation where it's like they were gonna get in trouble and they just had to fucking haul ass out of there, like some kind of chase mechanics, that would be pretty funny. In which case, I'm not sure if the Flaming Fist would probably send a patrol to the city at some point, and that would be something the players would have to deal with. So yeah, to wrap things up, we'll see what happens. Fort Belawarian tomorrow, I presume. I've got things prepared all the way for if they return to the city. It's evening time. They will meet with Grandfather Zatembe to follow up on here's your ritual results. And then that night, I plan on unleashing the Malar's Throat combat scenario, which is a bunch of this is from the book. It's just a little it's a little note that's like mentioned with like 2 lines. It's like, oh, Malar's Throat is invaded by a bunch of undead. Like an army of like skeletons and ghouls and stuff comes screaming out of the jungle, which is great because a big part of my campaign is I want to make the death curse be the fact that there are more undead being created and that they're being more aggressive and dangerous. So I want to have that scenario. I think I have it timed where when the players leave the Temple of Savras after getting all their ritual results, then they will hear the alarm bells ringing. And that will be the clue that they are running to the gates right here. The gates are being shut as people are rushing in, and I want to make that classic scenario of like the gates are shut, but there's still people on the other side, and now you've got this dilemma of like, oh, we got to let these people in, but we got to keep the gates shut because the monsters are coming and all that. I want to create a brief little scenario there, but then the main purpose is for the players to go beyond the gates and obviously go fight this army of undead, which I have a map set up here. I'm covering this right now. I don't know if we'll get to this. This is a lot of stuff. I guess, again, this is all of Fort Belawarian. This is meeting with Zatembe and then getting to Malar's Throat. I very much doubt we'll get to this next session, so I'll probably talk more about this on next week's Crafting Annihilation as I then break down all the terrible things that went wrong in Fort Belawarian. But I've got this kind of combat scenario here to represent the bottom of the ravine of Malar's Throat. There's the temple in the middle, and it's kind of it's very much an active situation where the players have to rush in and be heroes. Like, there are people being actively attacked and killed by undead, so like they can't just sit back and, you know, plink them from afar or whatever and work out the tactics. They have to just rush in. Which I'm proud of how they handled that in the other scenario where I also created a situation where there were like captives or being actively attacked by undead. Hopefully I'm not pressing too much undead on them. Obviously that's a big part of the my campaign is the undead are dangerous. I realize that's pretty much all they've fought so far, other than you know, some sharks and like a harpy. But you know, the undead are a big part of Chult, and this is part of the danger. So this will be, there's a bunch. I think there's like 3 or 4 skeletons, 3 or 4 zombies, and a ghoul, which shouldn't be too hard for the players, depending on how things went in Fort Belawarian. Yeah, I don't see it being particularly difficult, but this is a just another combat scenario I've got planned for the evening of day 2, and then that will end day 2, and then day 3 with the dinosaur races. And I promise I will get to explaining my dinosaur races eventually. This is, when are they gonna get to the fireworks factory of like The Simpsons? And I knew I had a lot of content for Port Nyanzaru. I didn't realize it would take so many sessions as it is now. And granted, Fort Belawarian will be a nice distraction because they're not in the city. Literally, they're off doing a different thing. But as I said, I've got more things planned for the city. And then after that, when they do the dinosaur race, finally on day 3, and then they'll meet with Wakanga. He'll be proud of them for all of the stuff they've done so far, including that Malar's Throat rescue and everything else. They'll meet with them, get more information. And then finally, probably at that point, it will end day 3. They'll begin day 4, and in the morning of the 4th day, then they will go out into the jungle, and I will probably level them up to 3 at that point, because they would have been level 2 for quite a while, actually, longer than we were level 2 in any of our previous campaigns. And that is the plan for basically the next couple sessions. So I'll go into more detail of all those events as we get closer to that, but I think that will go ahead and do it for this week's Crafting Annihilation video. If you like my content, do check out patreon.com/RogueWatson and tune in tomorrow for our next Tomb of Annihilation session, where we do Fort Belawarian, and hopefully things will work out and be fun, ultimately. Right? I'm sure it'll be fun. Alright, see you tomorrow.